Namaste. So welcome to your 5 minutes of self-care. Today, I'd like to speak to you about setting your boundaries. We spoke about vulnerability last week. And once we show vulnerability, sometimes people tend to use it against us. It's the same like saying, when you're kind, people misunderstand kindness, compassion, and empathy as a weakness. But it's not a weakness. Again, it's a superpower because love always overcomes fear and love always wins. That is the key component because we all are connected. Once you understand this concept, you understand that trying to force something or trying to be mean or pushy is not going to work on the long-term run. Now, setting your boundaries is a key component of self-care and self-love. You cannot give from an empty cup, meaning if you overgive, overplace, you cannot expect other people to give back in the same amount. You cannot expect that it will be rewarded. And you cannot expect you can continue doing this without hitting a certain burnout. And it's just normal to know when to step back and to set your boundaries in a kind way. Sometimes we set our boundaries way too late and we tend to get really angry and upset and we start not being able to communicate our boundaries in a very effective and a kind way because we just reached the limit. In order to avoid this, always check in with yourself. If you're in a meeting, in a discussion, and something triggers you, before you just assume something has been said this way or you have understood it this way, because that's also our own perception, and that perception gets influenced by our own traumas that we have experienced, so we can get triggered. If you are in this situation, ask yourself, okay, how do I understand this? Why is this triggering me? And if you feel like really that is a moment where someone pushes a little bit too much over your limit, then say something. Say something there and then. And finding the words is not always easy. So if you're not able to find the right words, then wait. And just let the emotion subside. Breathe. But if it gets to a point that it is too much for you and you feel you're already burning out and people ask too much of you, this can be on board, in corporate, private equity. And I have seen this especially with startups, where the CEOs have driven themselves into burnout, overworked, and they expect exactly the same dedication and commitment from their team. And you can't expect that. So how you treat yourself, how you are able to set your own boundaries, that teaches others how they treat you. And it teaches, and it is actually an example for people to learn the same thing, that they know how to say no, which is a complete sentence. Because if you do not set your boundaries, and the tendency is we then explode in a certain stage and we blame the other person. But it's not true because we have enabled that other person to treat us this way. I know, I repeat this. We have enabled the other person to treat us this way. That sounds sometimes like a harsh wake-up call, or you bring the power back within. And it's a form of empowerment for yourself, knowing I can actually control this and I can manage this by saying no, complete sentence. For example, something needs to get done really urgently in the evening. Do ask yourself, okay, does it really need to get done? Is this really urgent? Or is it just because out of the fear of another person? Because the other person stresses out like crazy, and you can see that it's actually not reasonable. How can you set your boundaries? instead of actually having to work overnight shift. Or, for instance, in relationships, partnerships, marriages, friendships, when you say, well, sorry, I really do not have time for this because I'm not going to go out tonight because I really like to go to sleep at that specific time of the night. This is part of my routine. And I see this especially with me. I have totally changed. By 10 o'clock latest, I'm in bed sleeping. And my meditation, I start already getting myself ready at 9 p.m. latest. And this is my way of living. And it's not for everyone. But most of my friends know that is so. It's not always clear for everyone that I will not go out and drink anymore because things have just changed and I have changed. But that's perfectly okay. And it's up to me to set these boundaries and enable or educate people that it's not the same version anymore, how I used to be 1 year ago or 1 month ago or 2 months ago. So that's something really important. And I take this responsibility very seriously. And it's the same with work. If you tend to constantly push over time, work for free or something, you are enabling it. And take this power back and be able to say no. And this is how life goes. We have the tendency to go into victimization, but it's not the case. There are always two to tango. And having this courage to say no, it makes you feel being out of the comfort zone for a while, but then you get so used to it. You get so used to it. And people get used to it. They just get used to the new version of you, and that's perfectly fine. And people, if they fall away, they fall away. Let them fall away. That's perfectly fine. Because they were supposed to not be in your life or part of your life at the first place. Things change. Now, setting your boundaries this week. See if you can get used to saying in a very kind way, communicating your boundaries when you feel undermined, patronized, sidelined, cheated. And I know our society has and still does support and rewards the ruthless, people without integrity, cheating and stealing. But you know what? It doesn't mean that we need to be the same. There's a shift in consciousness. And there's a shift in integrity, how people do business. And you will attract exactly these people. Unless you still have to learn a lesson there. Namaha, namaste.